Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Monday, yes, Monday, February 4th, and you are listening to episode 194 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So if you were not paying attention to Twitter this morning, you missed my post that said this week's podcast would be a day late. Unfortunately, with the wake for my mother-in-law, followed by the funeral, and then with having various family members in town, and if you can hear it in my voice, the cold that I picked up from one of them, which knocked my ass out all of Sunday afternoon and night, this is the reason that we're delayed a day, but I'm feeling better now, that's for darn sure. But I was so sick that I didn't even watch the Super Bowl, and that's sad since my team, the Patriots, were playing in said Super Bowl and won, in case you missed it. But that's just gives you an idea of how sick I was, and there was no chance I was going to be able to put together a show. And like I said, I just so much stuff going on with my wife's family in town for the death of my mother-in-law, unfortunately. But that is now behind us, moving on to better days from here on in, and we're back into Planetside and the Instant Action Podcast. So without further ado, what's in store for this week's show? Well, first up, I have a little PTS update to talk about, which includes, a little bit of Max information to it. Then I have some PS4 news, followed by an epic Reddit post about stuff you should know in Planetside 2. And then I'm going to finish up with the current Planetside Arena information that dropped last week as well, which includes the closed beta and stuff like that. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. First up this week, and sort of out of the blue, I didn't expect a PTS update to be dropping on us at any time soon. January 31st, the PTS, which for new listeners that aren't familiar with it, that's the public test server, only available for PC players of the game, got an update. And besides some miscellaneous changes and fixes and additions, the two biggest things that were added to the PTS are the Valkyrie, not being added, but changes being made to the Valkyrie, specifically the VLG for the Valkyrie. Its reload speed was reduced, its direct damage was increased, and its lifespan was reduced down to 3 seconds. And the reason for this is because after the devs received feedback, they felt that the reload speed reduced the value of the weapon being wire-guided, and the damage increase compensates for some of the reverted reload speed while maintaining the feeling of control. And again, that's the VLG for the Valkyrie, which is the wire-guided weapon that it uses. But that was only the smallest portion or a little bit on the PTS, because we got some unexpected max weapon adjustments. And while they do open this up by saying that they spoke about a max revamp in various streams, I don't remember them, and maybe that's just me not fully paying attention, but they're taking some time right now to address some of the NC Max's weaponry and to do some touch-ups on the VS and TR Max weaponry. Now, the shotguns for the NC are being heavily revised, and this is in an attempt to reel in its stopping power, but also to increase the consistency of pellets in each shot, as well as diversify the weapon rolls, so they're a little more noticeable. The big thing that they want regarding this, obviously, is your feedback after playing with them on PTS. And it's worth noting that all of the NC weapons right now feel and have changed significantly from their current status on the live servers themselves. So just starting off, and before I really dive into this, this is a pretty big nerf coming to the NC Max itself and the various weapons that it uses. Now, I am a NC main. That's the only character right now that I have that is BR120 and working its way through the ASP. That being said, I do not pull a Max a lot. I only pull Max occasionally. So obviously I play Engineer more than anything else. So take my comments on this with the grain of salt that they are. Again, I don't use the Max a ton at this point, but even I, someone who's not a main Max player or anything like that, sees these nerfs for what they are. The NC Max is definitely the most overpowered Max in the game currently, but I'm worried that some of these changes might be a little too far to the other end. If you're curious, you can search out posts on Reddit from other people who are actually doing some theorizing specifically with numbers that show that potentially these nerfs are a little too much to NC, but let's actually get into them. So the cone of fire for all NC Max shotguns has been standardized, and this is a buff for most of these weapons, or all of them. The cone of fire bloom is now 0.5. The standing hipfire cone of fire is now 0. The moving cone of fire is now 0.5. The crouching cone of fire is 0. The crouch walking cone of fire is now 0.25. The maximum hipfire cone of fire of the movement states above is now 1. Also, slug ammunition attachments have all been removed and refunded. They are available on the PTS. Short and long reloads have been standardized for these weapons, so hitting a long reload is no longer possible. So no matter when you do a reload on these, it's the same amount of time. Now, here are the specific weapon changes for all these various guns. So starting with the scatter cannon, its damage range went from 130 at 8 meters to 50 at 18, down to 125 at 8, and down to 35 at 20. Pellets per shot went down from 6 to 5. The refire rate went from 333 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds. Its ammo was reduced from 60 to 54. The reload times, short reload was increased to 3 seconds, and the long was decreased down to 3. The pellet spread was reduced from 3 to 2, and the extended magazine size went from 4 down to 2. So the dev notes on this particular one state that while it retains its ability to one-click body shot infantry without headshots, it now comes at a higher cost through rate of fire penalties and a slimmer damage margin to secure a one-shot kill. So basically, if you're standing right next to an infantry player, you're most likely still going to one-shot kill them. I think the nano weave question is still valid, and it may take 2 shots from a scatter cannon to kill them. But again, you should be close to them for that to happen. You'll note that the damage range, though, that drop-off, especially the 35 damage at 20 meters, just really shows that you need to be right next to someone for the scatter cannon to really be effective. These are no longer going to be decent long-range weapons at all. So in the past, if you're running the scatter cannons or Scat Max in general, you could basically nail infantry across the way and have no issues killing them. That's going to be a lot harder now, as some of your pellets are definitely not going to hit. Moving on to the Matic, and honestly, the Matic is what I use primarily on my Maxes. The damage range, which was 100 at 15 meters and 70 at 30 meters, stays 100 at 15, but was increased to 75 at 50 meters. The pellets per shot, though, went from 6 to 3. The magazine size was increased to 8 to compensate that. But again, the ammo capacity was reduced from 60 to 48. The short reload is 3.25 seconds. It was increased. And again, the long reload went from 3.8 down to 3.25. So again, you'll see those short and long reloads are the exact same at 3.25 seconds. The pellet spread went from 2.15 down to 1.75. And the extended magazine, just like the scattered cannon, went from 4 to 2. The dev notes on this one says that this was the most popular NC Max shotgun with the fewest drawbacks. So what they're doing is they're pushing the Matic a bit further into its mid-range niche by increasing the reliance on accurate aim while reducing its versatility at close range. So basically, I think if you're defending a point or something and have people running at you, the scatter cannon's going to be the better choice than the Matic at this point. But if you're trying to hit people a little further away, the Matic is probably the better choice for you at this point. But still, there's some pretty big nerfs to these. Next, moving on to the Hacksaw. The damage range was 125 at 8 meters to 45 at 18. It was reduced to 75 at 8 meters and 25 at 15 meters. Pellets per shot, just like the rest, went from 6 down to only 5, though, so it has more pellets than the other two. Magazine size, again, increased to 8 from 6. Ammo capacity also reduced from 60 down to 48. Its reloads now are both at 3.5 seconds. Its pellet spread went from 4 down to 3, and again, the extended magazine from 4 down to 2. The notes on this one state that it's retaining its highest damage per second of all the shotguns. They're hoping that it will feel better to use thanks to its cone of fire and pellet spread adjustments. The final shotgun for the NC Maxes is the AF-23 Grinder. Its damage was changed from 130 at 8 meters to 50 at 18 meters, down to 50 at 8 meters and 20 at 20 meters. Its refire rate from 333 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds. Magazine size from 8 to 12, so again, an increase on magazine size. Ammo capacity on this one was reduced from 64 to 60, and both its reloads are standardized at 4 seconds. It also says that this weapon is now automatic. And the dev notes that say, despite being the mag size shotgun alternative, it didn't have enough of an identity to warrant using over most other options. In fact, I don't even think I have the grinders unlocked. They've moved it to a slow, chunky suppressing weapon with a high uptime and room clearing capabilities. The interesting change on that is now that it's gone to automatic. However, I think that damage fall off on all ranges is really going to hurt using the grinders, in all honesty. I still think most people will use the scatter cannon in a close quarters situation over the grinder, but I think playing with them we're really going to have to see. But really the big change on all these is not so much max versus infantry type deals, but max versus max combat, I don't think they've really taken that into effect as much, because an NC Max used to be able to hold its own against the VS and TR Maxes and maybe beat out them based on how a player utilizes them and especially which weapons they're using. But now, at this point, I'm afraid that both the TR and the VS Max units are absolutely going to shred a lot of these NC Max variants in close quarters combat. Like if they're standing right next to each other, an NC Max is going to be absolutely decimated, and we're not going to do nearly as much damage to the other Max suits. And I'm hoping the devs are going to take that into consideration before pushing this stuff to live. Now, you did hear me correctly in saying that the VS and TR Max units got some updates as well. They do feel that they're in a pretty good spot overall. However, there are a few underused weapons that they thought were too similar, and they've made some adjustments to help diversify them out a little bit. So first up with the Quasar on the VS, they're trying to move it to a bit more of a competitive alternative to Blue Shifts or Nebulas, so it's going to sit somewhere in between them in terms of damage and accuracy output. So they've changed the short reload to 2 seconds. That's a bump up. The long reload to 2.7 seconds, which is a slight bump down. They reduced all of its cone of fires a bit. just a little bit down to where they were currently. I still think people are going to use blue shifts over it, regardless of the change that they made to it. Next on the Cosmos, they're calling these changes a experimental departure to how the weapon used to behave. Instead of it being a higher ammo capacity quasar, they're going to move it more towards an unstable ammunition style weapon with less emphasis on headshots and more consistent damage over time. So they've taken the short reload and increased it slightly, the long reload and decreased it slightly. They've changed the headshot multiplier from 2 to 1.2. They've reduced the projectile velocity down to 400, but in the same time, they've increased the projectile size. And they've also modified the visuals to make it look more like the unstable ammunition that you see coming out of the other Vanu weapons that use it. Next, moving on to the TR weapons, the only one that they wanted to change was the Heavy Cycler. And before making these changes, they felt that it was essentially an inferior mutilator with no real reason to use it if you had any other arsenal option unlocked. They didn't want to change the weapon too much, so they're just increasing its reload speed and initial accuracy to give it a more solid place in the arsenal itself. They've done this by reducing the short reload slightly to 2.2 seconds, and then they reduced both the standing cone-of-fire, moving cone-of-fire, and the crouch walking cone-of-fire slightly to make it, like they said, that initial accuracy a little bit better for that weapon itself. So if you are a MAX player, you want to get yourself over to the PTS and play around with some of these changes. What I'd like to see Daybreak Games do is open up some sort of weekend where they do a big Max playtest and try and get a lot of people in there and a lot of people in Max suits. And I'd like to see Maxes against Maxes and stuff like that so that they can get a good idea of this. So Daybreak, if you're listening, this might be a good time to fire up the PTS and re-award the analyst helmet to some people or award something else in game to these people, because I'm worried about some of these changes going live as being too much of a nerf to NC Maxes. And while they're currently in kind of an OP status, I think that you're tuning them too far in the other direction, and it feels much like a reverse Zoe that we had way back in the day when the Zoe was way, way, way too overpowered. But again, these are just my opinions, not as a Max main, but just somebody reading this and reading some of the other comments that people had. But with that, and before my voice fails on me, let's move on to our second topic this week. So number 2 this week is just a small PlayStation 4 bit of information for Planetside 2 players, and actually this will also be some information that PC players would be curious about as well, because someone on the Reddit asked what the ETA is for ants on the PlayStation 4, because we do know that at some point PS4, PS2 players are going to get the ant. They're not going to get construction. That's still something that could never come to the PS4. And from people yelling at me last time I said maybe it will come, I think most people hope it will never come to the PS4. But that's neither here nor there. But again, someone asked the question, and Nick did respond. And he says, when the refuel and refine alert reaches PC, it, meaning the ant, should be coming to PS4 at nearly the same time. Means the refuel and refine alert. He goes on to say, ants are required for that alert, so, ... that means ants are coming to the PS4. Somebody pressed him a little further, saying, when's that going to be? And he said, for both PC and PS4, that alert should be coming in about a month. If you don't remember what the refuel and refine alert is, that's they're planning on dropping these big things onto specific continents, and people are going to need to take ants and head on out and grab cordium and start filling up these giant things that land on the continent, and they look like hives because they're just reusing the hive model, and it's just you got to take your ant out there, get cordium, and whichever faction fills up the hives fastest is going to win this particular alert. And Nick's comments say this alert is coming to the PC and the PS4 at the same time, or as close as possible, because as you guys know, a lot of times the PS4 updates are slightly behind the PC updates. But based on his response, I'm expecting to see this coming to us in March, as well as Ants on the PS4 in March. So PS4 players, you can get yourself excited for Ants at least. And with that, let's move on to this week's Veteran's Voice. Take it away, Romas.
Continuing with last week's idea of addressing people I don't normally talk to, let's send a message out to the brass. I'd send you a memo, but we both know that with Bloggins flying, he would get shot down trying to bring you a memo. He's a bright boy, but about as sharp as a sack of wet mush. Part of my duties on Araxis require me to assist the WOMPs. That's the developmental division, whose acronym stands for Working on Mostly Preposterous Solutions. Working with this team of elite TR minds, we've determined that the policy restricting the place where we can put Cordium-powered structures is 100% bull cookies. I'm hereby lobbying for a committee to be established to redesign no-deploy zones. With the changes to how construction objects work, I believe it is time to allow us to place right up to the perimeter, if not inside, of a base. Considering that constructed outposts can be quickly shelled into oblivion, it isn't much of a stretch to allow those of us with construction experience to contribute more directly. We request that you allow those of us with a more tactical style to use the tools provided to us to shape the environment to our advantage. That all being said, we do offer a compromise if that is too much for you to handle. Let us just shoot the flail into enemy bases. Or friendly bases if we're feeling in a mood to live under a bridge. The flail is powerful, but mostly it's used just to disassemble enemy constructed bases. Not very helpful. It's like your mother giving you a foam sword and then telling you can't play with it inside, and it's minus 40 outside. Not much fun to be had. If you don't like those suggestions, too bad. I'll bash it with you again next week twice. Twice the womps. One might even say that if you're not going to listen, you deserve all of the womp. Back to you, Derringer.
Now, when Romas says brass, I assume he's talking about the developers of Daybreak Games. So hopefully developers are listening. And maybe one of them can say something to Romas. You can get him on Twitter. So that way he doesn't double womp you guys next week. Because I don't want to hear that again a second time. Just let him do what his flail thing, and he'll be happy. With that, topic number 3 this week was an interesting Reddit post titled 206 Things Every Planetside 2 Player Should Know. And this was actually put together by Reddit user ER2Z. And sorry if I'm butchering your name because it's supposed to be your Ertoots or something. I'm going back. I'm calling Arai out because I said his name wrong many, many times. So he put together a little bit of tips and tricks. He also sends people to other various websites. He doesn't send people to me, which I'm a little disappointed about, but that's okay. But this 206 things that he's put together at this point starts with a lot of general stuff like how to use the chat commands, talks about settings and, specifically the decloak on fire tab, how to change things on the graphical tab, which may be basic for some people, and the voice tabs, key binding tabs, all the different tabs that you can go through. He talks about the map and the mini map. Specifically being able to place the H key to expand or contract your mini map itself, which I don't think a lot of people know. Changing all the different, even just how to open the map, which is something as simple as that. He explains resources and currency within the game itself. He explains how to find your statistics, get into deeper statistics, talks about customization and cosmetics for the game, how you can change your title, banner, voice pack, how you can preview various cosmetics, where you can find them after you've purchased them with certs, things like that. He even explains, something simple as the anvil and hammer symbol means that it's been created by a player through Player Studio. He talks about redeploying, talks about alerts and events, even gives all the different phases of how a continent unlocks and goes through its different steps before it locks again. He talks about directives, talks about a couple other miscellaneous things like something as simple as playing Alt-F so you can see what your frame rate is within the game itself, how you can hover over players and hold Q to bring up a menu, how to skip the tutorial, different things like that. And then he also goes through some various infantry things, just general gameplay principles, but is good to go through all the various different classes itself. Now, I skipped right to the engineer class, and while I knew most of them, the one that he talked about that I'd never even thought about before was using a crossbow and also recon darts. Because obviously I forgot that the crossbows have recon bolts attached to them that work just like recon darts. And there's always these times when playing as an engineer, I feel like, I wish there was just one more thing that I could do as an engineer. And while it means that I'm going to have to set my beloved IA, the Derringer pistol, I got to put that aside to use a crossbow. Being able to throw recon darts around as an engineer is hugely helpful for everybody that I play with, because we don't always run a infiltrator in every squad. So, this is one that I'm going to be using from now on, and I can't believe that I didn't know something about something like that. So, again, it's a really good thing that he put together, which talks about every class you can think of. And then after that, he goes into all the different weapons. All classes can use SMGs. Did you know that? Except for Maxes, of course. Did you know you could trial weapons for 30 minutes with the try now button? I don't know that everybody know that. He talks about different sniper rifles and how each faction has a unique one. He talks about the unique heavy weapons, the mini chain gun, jackhammer, and the lasher. Talks about the faction unique rocket launchers. And then even talks about other weapons that you should know out there actually exist. He talks briefly about implants, how to get new implants, how to use the ISO4 recycler. Talks about vehicles in general, and then again, all the various individual vehicles and a specific tip or two on all of them. Again, this is just a really good document that he put together, which just has a couple points about any particular aspect in the game. Even if you're a long-time player like myself, you might find something in this that you weren't really aware of, and it's going to make your gameplay change just a little bit to the better. So, again, if you're a new player or an old player, I'm going to include a link to this in this week's show notes. Please do yourself a favor and just check it out. With that, let's move on to the fourth and final topic before I dive into some listener email. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I'd talk a little bit about Planetside Arena, because if you're a member of Planetside 2, you should have already gotten your closed beta access to the game itself. I also know that many people got through the lottery that they were having at Planetside A lot of people got passes to sign up for it and receive a key. But things like that. But the closed beta is here as of January 30th. So, again, go in if you've got access to it and check out the game. There's a schedule out there currently. I know February 2nd they had, February 2nd and 3rd, they had some game time where they were trying out team stuff. I know as I'm recording this right now, they've got some team stuff going on right now, and they are announcing all kinds of stuff that's going on when they're live, beta access when it's live. So if you have beta access, stay tuned to the Steam page for Planetside Arena, because they're posting it there. But also the other news is that they've also opened up the official forums for Planetside Arena as well. They're announcing all the beta updates that they're pushing out there. And they're also announcing when they've got closed beta play sessions going on, which takes me a little segue into how I'm going to start reporting Planetside Arena updates as they come live. Right now, since we're in a closed beta session or setting, I'm not going to be reporting on bug fixes and updates that they make during the closed beta. Once they decide that we are in a full open beta for Planetside Arena, I will start including patch notes into the episodes when those patches go live. Again, since we're still in a closed beta, and I consider the closed beta to be still just a testing ground where they're making a lot of various changes, I'm not going to comment or bring you each individual little closed beta change that they make to the game, because they're making a lot of them all at once. I would much rather start covering it once we're in open beta and anybody has a chance to play, not just the select people who have bought the game currently. So the final thing I want to talk about is the NDA for Planetside Arena, because there's some questions regarding that. And first off, what can you not post about Planetside Arena? So first off, you cannot post screenshots, you cannot post videos or streams, and you cannot make any sort of derivative works from either of those two things. So basically, if you're playing Planetside Arena, you might as well turn off your NVIDIA Shadow Play or whatnot, and just so you don't tempt yourself to make any recordings, because you will get banned for doing, not for having it running, but banned for making any recordings. So the next question is, what is it okay to post? Any discussions that you want to make regarding the game itself, any thoughts on your gameplay experience, and obviously any feedback, bug reports, or suggestions. It really is centered on that you're not allowed to post any visual content from the game itself, either your own or someone else's. So please don't run afoul of the NDA, and remember just to talk about your experiences. Don't show your experiences. So that's going to be it for Planetside Arena this week, and we'll see what other news we have coming out next week. But with that, let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
And I did receive an email last week. I actually received the email as I was recording or as I was editing and closing and wrapping up last week's show. So Holiday in Cambodia, I apologize that you didn't get to hear this last week. But like I said, I was finishing up the editing for the show as you emailed this to me. So Holiday in Cambodia writes, "Hi Derringer, I really enjoy your podcast. I listen while driving my acid truck along the highway, usually around 4 a.m. I have questions. It seems like maybe I'm only playing half the game. I try hard, I buy a lot of guns, I die a lot. So," and he starts listing some various questions. And I will do my best to answer these in turn, because he writes, "I'd be super happy if you just had time to answer one of my questions." So let's roll through these as best I can. So first he says, do I need to learn all the text-based communications like /whisper, dude, are we sneaking up? And the short answer to that is no. I mean, you don't really need to know them, especially if you're playing in an outfit, because most outfits are going to do everything through voice chat, whether it's talking in your squad via holding down Z, or I guess one also works. Does one work for squad or platoon? I can't remember off the top of my head. But either way, talking in your squad, pressing the Z key and holding it down activates voice chat, so you can talk to people in your squad. That might be better than using Whisper. Maybe they won't reply to you, but that's probably what I would do. Next, he asks, how do I really learn how to lead? It seems like the only thing that makes the game worth playing. Now, I would disagree that leading is the only thing that makes the game worth playing, because I have absolutely no desire to lead in Planetside 2 because I feel like it's hurting cats at times. But if you really want to learn how to lead, I would do one of two things. I would either fire up the game and start my own mentor squad and just pick people into it and then experiment. That might not be the best way to do it, but the other option is find an existing outfit and go play with them. And when you've got somebody leading that outfit, you're going to pick up tips and tricks from them as they move you guys from base to base, assaulting, defending, or whatnot. And then I would also say figure out who that outfit leader is, or that particular squad leader is at that time that you feel has done a good job and made your game more fun, and whisper them. And at that point, ask them, say, I'm looking to become a squad leader, platoon leader, whatnot. Can I play with you some more? Can you give me some tips? I guarantee that the majority of the people squad leading that are allowing you into their outfit or their squad to play with them would be more than happy to give you some tips, some pointers, or even allow you to lead one of their squads in a platoon at some point in the game. Next, he says, weapons, I really don't get the differences. I know you can shoot farther with some do more damage, some deflect at odd angles. How do I choose? This is kind of a difficult question to answer, I'll be honest, because it all really depends what class you're playing. Obviously, if you're playing an infiltrator and you want to do sniping from a distance, you're going to be looking at the sniper rifles. If you want to play heavy assault and you want a gun that has a lot of ammo in it, you're going to look at an LMG. If you want to focus on close quarters stuff, you're going to pick up an SMG or something like that. If you're playing an engineer, you're going to be using the different carbines in the game. I mean, there's a different good one on every faction. I mean, I know engineer better than anything else. I think if you're playing engineer and want a good carbine, NC, GD7F, can't go wrong. VS, you can't go wrong with the Serpent. On TR, you can't go wrong with the Track 5 or the Jaguar. Going out from there, again, it really depends on what you're playing. I mean, if you go out and ask some people playing what they think the best weapon is for X class, a lot of people have opinions, and they're more than happy to share them with you. Next, he says, I swear I unloaded an entire magazine to the guy, and he turned around and one shot killed me. I'd have to see the encounter that you had. Maybe you did a lot of body shots on him, and he turned around and got you in the head. That would be my biggest guess as to why he one-shot killed you. But again, I need to see the exact situation on how it occurred. And maybe you did this when we were having the awful hit reg within the game, and that could have affected it too. Next, he asks, there are many outfits. How do I make my own, submit a logo, and declare my tactics to the world? It's very easy, actually, to make an outfit. If you just go into the outfit tab of the game itself, you can create your own outfit. I mean, I have just a dummy throwaway outfit called the Instant Action Podcast on Vanu on Emerald. I think it's on Connery at this point. And it's really just a throwaway outfit. I created it. I chose the logo that I wanted, the Vanu Poodle, in case you're curious. And that was that. If you want to submit your own logo, you're going to need to check out Player Studio, though. And there's other people much better with much better knowledge about Player Studio than me who can help you out. But if you Google Planetside 2 Player Studio, you can get more information on that. Next, he says, I wish I could easily talk with the guys who killed me. I'd say things like, nice shot, or you suck, can't you see I was tending to wounded? Well, there is no easy way to do that in the game. I mean, you have to use Whisper. So a lot of times, if I do think, and I've done this many times in game, if somebody has killed me or it's been a good 1v1 and they take me out and they did a good maneuver or whatnot, I will whisper them and say, nice shot. Sometimes people are very taken aback by it because they don't expect to hear something good from somebody in game. But yeah, there is no easy way to do it, unfortunately. You just got to whisper them. And the final thing he says, playing while drunk. That's how I often play, not at first, but there you go, reality. I want to have fun, help others, win because I did good, lose to a better opponent. I really don't mind. That was not really a question. Playing while drunk, I don't really recommend it, but there's no wrong way to play Planetside 2. So if you want to do drunk ops, feel free to do drunk ops whenever you want. So again, this all came from a listener named Holiday in Cambodia who had to write to me and said the name comes from an old Dead Kennedy song. And I'm just going to finish by saying, Holiday in Cambodia, I am as old as you think I am. If you're a new listener, I know exactly who the dead Kennedys are. When I was in college, I really wanted to date this girl. And yes, you can read between the lines on what date really means. I really wanted to date this girl, and she was huge into dead Kennedys and Ramones. And I learned more about the dead Kennedys and the Ramones in 1992 than I ever needed to or wanted to. So I am a fan of Dead Kennedys and Ramones, and I knew exactly where your name came from. So thank you for the email. And if you have any other questions, let me know. All right, that's going to be it for this week's show. Again, I apologize for it being a day late. It won't happen again next week. But how can you get in touch with me or the show? First off, as always, please visit my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. Email me like Holiday in Cambodia did, instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can also call me and leave me a voicemail at 347-4VM-4PS2, or that is 347-486-4772. Also, please follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. Finally, in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere else. Again, that's my biggest request in 2019. I'd love more reviews on iTunes specifically. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.
Derringer's the oldest Planetside player, and he still has the brain of a 12-year-old.